Hello everyone. Today I will be analyzing the Black Mirror episode Joan is Awful. I will be analyzing this through the sociological lens of the social construction of technology, which is also known as SCOT. The main idea of SCOT is that technologies do not evolve in isolation, but rather they are influenced by human choices, cultural values, competing social groups, and institutional interests. A real-world example of this would be a cell phone. A cell phone is not just an isolated device, it is the product of engineers, marketers, regulators, and users, who all play a part in what it should be and how it should work. When we apply this idea to Joan is Awful, the episode can be viewed less as just a piece of sci-fi technology that magically exists, and more about how social forces such as corporations, legal contracts, and the viewing audience all give this tech its meaning and power. Now I'm going to break down SCOT a little further. To further explain this concept, I will be touching on the ideas of relevant social groups, interpretive flexibility, and closure and stabilization. Relevant social groups are the actors who influence how a technology is designed or used. In the real world, that could be engineers, users, or regulators. In Joan is Awful, this includes Joan herself, executives from Streamberry, the lawyers who wrote the terms and services, and the audience that consumes the show. The next idea is interpretive flexibility. SCOT argues that certain technologies can mean very different things to different groups. For Joan, the AI system is invasive and destructive. But for Streamberry, it's entertainment gold, while the audience just views it as entertaining content. Eventually, the technology stabilizes because one interpretation wins out. In Joan is Awful, corporate and audience interests align to sustain the system, while Joan's resistance is marginalized. SCOT shows us how social negotiations decide which version of a technology becomes dominant. Now, I will be analyzing 3 scenes from Joan is Awful that we can apply SCOT to. The first scene shows Joan learning about the Streamberry terms and conditions, which is shown here. So Joan had casually clicked accept on these terms and conditions, which is crucial to the entire episode. From a SCOT lens, this shows how technologies are shaped not just by hardware, but by legal frameworks and social norms. We're so used to ignoring the fine print that we, in turn, normalize corporations embedding extreme power into these contracts that we agree to. Different social groups interpret this moment differently. Joan thinks she's just signing a routine document, while Streamberry interprets it as total permission to exploit her likeness, while the lawyers for Streamberry will view this as protection from litigation. The second scene that I will be referring to shows executives explaining how the AI can instantly generate content by feeding Joan's data into a simulation starring Salma Hayek. So we can see the executives viewing Salma Hayek. Here, Scott emphasizes that technology is not just inevitable. Streamberry chooses to use generative AI for exploitative entertainment rather than using it for something else useful, such as medical research or education. This is where interpretive flexibility collapses into closure. Among relevant groups such as corporations, shareholders, audiences, the general consensus is that this is just a streaming product and it's not just a neutral technology. The third scene that I will be taking a look at is when Joan and Salma Hayek's avatar team up to sabotage the production, which dramatizes resistance to dominant interpretations. And we have Joan and Salma Hayek here. Joan refuses to accept the corporation's framing of the technology. She fights to destabilize the system and reclaim her autonomy. I'm not sure if I said that right. I'm sorry. SCOT shows us that technologies are not fixed, but rather users and subgroups can resist and attempt to renegotiate meaning. However, the ending suggests that closure remains difficult because the institution, which is Streamberry, has more power than any one individual. Now we can reflect on audience positioning and ask ourselves, how are we, the audience, being shaped here? First, the show invites us to recognize ourselves in Joan. Just like her, we are constantly just casually accepting terms and conditions without even realizing the potential consequences. And we're positioned to feel complicit in this because we are agreeing to these terms that are set in place. And even if we may not be fully comfortable with what we're accepting, we won't really have a leg to stand on in legal terms because we have agreed to things that we may not be comfortable with, and that is completely on us. Second, the episode critiques our role as audiences of exploitative media. Just like how the viewers in the show are entertained by Joan's misery, we're also watching Joan is Awful on Netflix. This acts as a mirror to make us question our own consumption habits, and this makes me think of any reality TV show, really. It's kind of similar to how the audience watches Joan's life and judges her for any wrongdoings and are entertained by her humiliating herself. This is seen definitely with reality TV stars. They are just regular people, and even though they did elect to put themselves on TV, they still face very extensive scrutiny and judgment for doing a lot of things that I'm sure pretty much everybody has also done in their personal lives. Nobody is perfect, but when we see somebody plastered up on a screen, it can be very easy to pass judgment on them. Third, by using SCOT, we see that the episode pushes us to ask not what does AI inevitably do, but rather what choices are corporations making about how to use AI, and why do we let them make these choices? To wrap this up, through the framework of SCOT, Joan is Awful demonstrates that technology doesn't simply emerge fully formed or uncontested. Instead, its meaning and use are negotiated among social groups, which are made up of users, corporations, lawyers, and audiences. The terms of service scene shows how everyday habits give corporations power. The Streamberry control room scene reveals how institutions stabilize technology as entertainment and profit. And Joan's Rebellion illustrates resistance against institutional control. Ultimately, the episode reflects and critiques our own social structures, such as how corporations commodify our data, how audiences consume it uncritically, and how individuals resist. SCOT helps us see that technologies like AI don't determine society on their own, but rather we do. The question that Black Mirror leaves us with is whose interests are really in control. So thank you so much for watching this video, and I hope that you enjoyed my interpretation and my analysis of this episode. Bye.